Welcome to Jebtopia, where today we're going to be taking another deep dive during this NBA SoRare offseason. Now, this is the fourth team we're talking about so far, so if you enjoyed this video and want some additional information on a couple other teams, go ahead and check out the description below, where there will be a link to a playlist for all these videos. Now, before we get started, please do me a huge favor and go ahead and smash that like button. Also, if you don't have an NBA SoRare account, go ahead and click the link right here to create one, or you can check out the description below where there'll be some additional information and the link should be there as well. As always, I want to quickly touch on my non-financial financial advice. The purpose of these videos is to highlight players that we think are currently underpriced or kind of going under the radar and might have a lot of value throughout the season. However, that doesn't mean you should go and purchase these players immediately. We have an entire offseason plus additional mints once the season starts. So instead, observe the market and make thoughtful and purposeful decisions. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. After a disappointing season and an early exit in the playoffs, the Warriors, for some reason, have gone ahead and doubled down on their old, declining, washed core, much to the dismay of former GM Bob Myers. Personally, I think this team is going to be an absolute train wreck, plagued by drama, industries, and frustration from the fans to the players, all the way to the front office. However, because the Warriors have decided to go all in, it presents us with an incredible opportunity for this upcoming SoRare season. So let's go on SoRare data and we can begin our deep dive. So looking at this Warriors roster, we can see right away they are in a interesting position in terms of determining who is going to start and who is going to be coming off the bench with the addition of Chris Paul. However, a player that is definitely going to be starting and will be absolutely crucial to the Warriors' success is Andrew Wiggins. So taking a look at Andrew Wiggins here, we have a pretty standard circulation. We have a price sitting at around $12, which is not bad. And we have a cap of 31. Now let's go ahead and take a look at his price graph. As you can see, not a ton of spikes here. We had this initial one pretty early in the season when I would imagine his circulation was pretty limited. We have tiny ones here. You can see that I even purchased Wiggins for $30 here. Since then, we can see that his price has kind of gone down to almost a third of what it was. We can see some of these going for under $10, but most of them are going a lot closer to 11. Which once again, I think is a pretty good price point for Andrew Wiggins right now. Like, once again, like this guy got him for under 10. And if you can throw in a low ball offer and someone accepts it, more power to you. Now let's go ahead and take a look at his scores. We can see that Andrew Wiggins, when he was healthy, we can see he missed a good chunk of games multiple times. But we can see when Andrew Wiggins played, he was pretty good at putting up some high ceiling numbers. We see in the playoffs here 240s. We see some 40s here and a 50. We see a 60 here, which is always super encouraging to see. And plenty of consistent 40s and 50s. And then, we get these 15s and 17s and these lower scores that kind of keep his cap in check. I think one thing that's important to remember is that Andrew Wiggins is only 28 years old. You could say he's about to be in his prime. He was the second best player 2 years ago on a championship team. So I love the fact that Wiggins is a player that can get you SoRare points on both sides of the court. He can put up a block. He can get in the passing lane and get a steal. He can hit threes. He can pass. Now, if Chris Paul starts or if he even pops up in a lot of the rotations that include Andrew Wiggins, I don't love the fact that that will probably limit Wiggins' assist abilities because I would imagine Chris Paul will be handling the ball and looking to make the plays. However, Andrew Wiggins, on the flip side, might have more chances at offensive rebounds and putbacks because he is going to be one of those bigger guys. Also, because of the threat that Chris Paul is from the mid-range, that might space out the paint a bit, which once again just gives Wiggins the opportunity to run on in there or box out and get additional offensive rebounds that leads to points or assists. Now, one last thing I do want to mention about Andrew Wiggins is that he is currently on the Canadian national team this offseason. So unless you can get Andrew Wiggins below $8 or $9, it might be worth pumping the brakes and just waiting until the season starts or the season is about to start and you know that Wiggins will be entering the season healthy. Overall, I think Wiggins is just an incredible athlete, a very good player who will get plenty of minutes, who will be crucial to the Warriors' success, and will get additional playing time and a bigger role as the older Warriors deal with injuries and load management. Now, really quickly, before we move on to our next player, I want to quickly point out that I think Kevin Looney is a bit interesting and might be worth doing some research on your own. We won't be taking a deep dive on Looney today because I do think his ceiling is somewhat limited unless his game has evolved over the offseason. And I don't love this price considering for just a little bit more, you could get someone like an Andrew Wiggins who has a much higher ceiling, in my opinion, and will have much more value over this upcoming season. Now, the next player I do want to take a look at is Corey Joseph. Now, if you're familiar with this channel at all, you know that we are Corey Joseph maxis. We've been on the Corey Joseph train since day one, and it's proved to be very profitable. Now, real quick, Corey Joseph has a standard circulation, has a dirt cheap price at below $2, which I love to see. He has a cap of 23, which is a bit high because he was playing towards the end of the season a bit more as Detroit was committing to tanking to get the best pick possible. Corey Joseph is a player that, you don't have to go pick up right away, even at this cheap price, because I think there's an opportunity for him to dip significantly lower in cap before he becomes a very valuable play. So I do think there will be a small window where his cap has dipped and people haven't realized yet that he will be an optimal play to squeeze into a lineup, because I do think this cap could get close to 12, maybe like even 10. Now let's take a look at the price graph. As you can see, like I said, we've been buying and flipping Corey Joseph since day one. And we've done very well. As you can see, there's been some pretty wild spikes as he's gone from, under a dollar to almost like $13, $14. Unfortunately, we never absolutely nailed the top, but we went from $2 to $10 here, or $9. And then again, we went from 3 to 7. We sold another one at 5. And as you can see, even here, there was a spike again near the end of the season where we could have sold Corey Joseph again. But I believe the reason I didn't sell him is because I was playing him in my lineups. Now, at first glance at the Warriors depth chart, it might seem like Corey Joseph has just no value this upcoming season and that he's going to just get buried on the bench. If we go back and take a quick look at the Warriors' current roster, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guards. And on top of that, you could make an argument that Corey Joseph is number 6 out of 6 on this list. However, I think Corey Joseph will have multiple windows of significant value this upcoming season. And that's because of the fact that the Warriors are very injury prone. Last season, Chris Paul missed a ton of time because of injury. Curry missed time because of injury. Klay Thompson missed time because of injury. Gary Payton missed time because of injury. So yes, going into the regular season, Corey Joseph might have absolutely no SoRare value. However, that hopefully will cause his cap to take a significant hit and might even push down his floor price quite a bit. And then as the season goes on and Chris Paul gets injured or Klay and Curry are taking time off for load management, Corey Joseph will be such an optimal play at such a low cap. This is not a guarantee by any means, but I do think there's a scenario where we see Corey Joseph in the starting lineup during a SoRare game week with a cap below 10. I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility here. So like I said, I don't think there's any rush to buy a Corey Joseph. I do think this price will go down even further, especially as more of his cards are minted at the beginning of the season. But I do think we see at least once this season, if not a couple times, where Corey Joseph's price is absolutely dirt cheap and he skyrockets to have significant value because his cap is so low and he is moved up higher on the depth charts because of injuries or players taking time off. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at his scores here. Now, we're not going to see any crazy ceiling games from Corey Joseph where he's dropping, a 50 or a 60, but you can see, especially during this stretch where Corey Joseph was allowed to play, he was putting up, 30s and 40s. And if his cap gets to around 10, 11, 12, a 30 or a 40 coming out of Corey Joseph is ideal. That is the type of player that everyone wants in their lineup. On top of that, Corey Joseph will be playing on a high octane offense that is the Warriors, as opposed to when he was playing with Detroit. So I think his ceiling even gets a little bit of a bump from that. Nothing necessarily crazy. I don't think we're going to see Corey Joseph drop a 60-point SoRare game, but him hitting 40 more than once this year, I think is totally reasonable. So yeah, I'm very high on Corey Joseph, just considering the price and the opportunities I think he could potentially have. All right, so before we go ahead and take a look at the next player, I really quickly want to mention Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga. And we're going to talk about them at the same time because I think they're in a similar situation, both within their personal careers and their role on the Warriors. Both of these guys are young players that the Warriors got with very high hopes, thinking they had a very high ceiling. However, they also felt the same way about Wiseman and Jordan Poole and ended up actually having to basically pay teams to take those guys off their hands. So there's obviously no guarantee that Moody or Kuminga take this giant leap that the organization is just praying they do. And part of the reason why is because Steve Kerr and the Warriors have not prioritized developing either of them. Now, I don't know if that changes going into this season, and that's kind of something that's a little difficult to predict. So once again, that's why I don't really want to take a deep dive here or recommend that you buy either of them. However, ultimately, I think they are definitely players that are worth watching. To start off the season, both of them will have a pretty low cap, which I love to see. Moody's price is a teeny bit high, but it's still kind of reasonable in my opinion. However, Kuminga's price is just crazy. $12, $13 seems way too high. Obviously, the reason why is because in the playoffs, his cap was so low, you could squeeze him into a lineup. But once I think the season starts and more cards mint of him and he doesn't put up any crazy numbers to start the season, I think this price tanks. So I would just observe, maybe buy one or both of these guys a couple weeks into the season. Like I said, ultimately, I think it really depends on if the Warriors are going to commit to their development this year or not. Make your own decisions on that. And we'll probably revisit that topic once the season has started and see what we think then. Now, a player I do want to talk about a little more in depth is Gary Payton II. Now, GP2 is in a very interesting situation here. And it's not a situation we've seen at all so far as we've looked at these teams and picked out players to take a deeper dive on. And that situation is the fact that Gary Payton II is vastly underminted because he started the season unable to play. Usually, when I pull up the price chart, I go all the way back to November. However, in this case, there were no GP2s that were minted until January. And that's because, like we said, Gary Payton wasn't playing. So as a result, there are far less available. And that provides an opportunity for a card like this to really increase in price very quickly. As you can see, even here in the offseason, if a couple people decide to buy, he could absolutely skyrocket in price. Now, quickly going back to the stats, we can see he has a cap of 13, which I think is pretty decent to start the season with, especially considering that we know that Gary Payton was beloved both by fans and his teammates, as well as the coaching staff. He's an elite defender, and the Warriors desperately need that. He will for sure be a regular part of any rotation they have. And similar to Corey Joseph, I think he will have plenty of windows where he gets lots of run because of injuries and or load management. Really quick, let's take a look at his scores. As we can see here, it's honestly kind of depressing. There's really nothing to get excited about. If you do buy a GP2 this offseason, you're basically praying that he kind of returns to the form he was in when he was on that Golden State Warriors championship team. I'm definitely not rushing to get a Gary Payton, and personally, I wouldn't get one this offseason. I think he's a player that's worth watching and would be interesting to purchase, especially if he takes a significant price dip as additional mints come out at the start of this season. But I wanted to take a little deeper look at GP2 just because of the fact that his mint count is so low, and he is a player that I think regardless if you end up buying or not, is worth watching just to see how the market reacts to the lower circulation and extrapolate that information to other players that might have a lower circulation as well. All right, so the last player that I want to take a look at today is Dario Saric. Now, I think Dario Saric is extremely interesting for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest being the fact that he is the tallest player on the current Golden State Warriors roster. The Warriors are very undersized, especially after getting rid of Wiseman, and adding Saric kind of added some desperately needed length. Additionally, there's been conversations about Saric being the sixth man coming off the bench. However, I wouldn't make any bets on that because the whole Warriors roster situation is really interesting. And I think at the very beginning of the season, at least, they're going to be trying a bunch of stuff. So, like all these players that we talked about today, besides maybe Andrew Wiggins, I think Sark is another one of those guys that you should keep an eye on and kind of see how many minutes he's getting, what role is he playing, how often is he getting off the bench, and use that to determine when you scoop him. Once again, similar to Corey Joseph and Gary Payton II, I think Sark will get many windows of opportunity, whether that's because of load management or injuries, like we've hammered over and over again today. And if we take a look at his price chart here, we can see that when he had those opportunities last year on the Suns, he held a lot of value on the SoRare market. We can see these extreme spikes where he went from $2 up to 15. Once again, back down to $2 here, even higher going to over 20. Once again, here down at $5, going up to 13. And then another $2 going up to close to 10. Those are very significant percentage increases. And because of Sark's size and skill set, I think it's completely reasonable to expect a couple of these massive pumps this upcoming season for Saric. Now, taking a look at stats, we can see he has standard circulation. His 3-day average is at $4. I personally would try to get him around 2, just because we consistently see that $2 price popping up even at the beginning of the season. So I think it's completely reasonable to think you can get one either right before the season starts or a couple weeks into the season, or closer to $2. He does have a cap of 9 though, which I think is beautiful. Let's take a quick look at his scores. We can see that Sark, kind of similar to Corey Joseph here. He's not going to drop a 50 or 60. He doesn't have this insane potential ceiling that he hits once every blue moon. But we can see several 30s here and a 40 here. And if someone's dropping a 30 or a 40 with a cap of 9, I would say that's pretty incredible and would be considered one of the top optimal plays. Look, when it comes down to it, 4 out of the 5 Warriors' best players are old. They will be injured or load managed multiple times throughout the season. There will definitely be multiple windows for multiple players off the bench to play a significant role and get significant minutes. So hopefully we've identified those players today and we can go ahead and front run the inevitable value that these players will get. And with that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the video there. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button. Really helps me out a lot and it's really appreciated. Once again, if you're looking for more videos like this, I have a playlist in the description below. And there's also a link to create your SoRare account if you don't have one in the description as well. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you guys next video. Please clap.